What if the American dream of a perfect family home turned into a living nightmare? For the Smurl family, their new house on Chase Street wasn't just a home. It was a hunting ground for a violent, demonic presence. But was any of it real? Today we re-separating fact from fiction in the terrifying case that became the inspiration for the Warrens' final. Section 1. The All-American Family and the House on Chase Street. Our story starts not with a ghostly whisper or a slamming door, but with a natural disaster and a family just looking for a fresh start. In 1972, Hurricane Agnes tore through northeast Pennsylvania, causing the Susquehanna River to swell and unleash catastrophic floods. Thousands were displaced, including Jack and Janet Smurl, a young couple from Wilkes-Barre who suddenly found themselves homeless. After searching for over a year, they finally found it in August of 1973, a duplex on Chase Street in the small, quiet town of West Pittston, Pennsylvania. It seemed perfect. The house was big enough for Jack, Janet, and their 2 young daughters, Dawn and Heather, and for Jack's parents, John and Mary, who moved into the other side. It was a classic picture of American family life, 3 generations all under one roof. The Smurls were a devout Catholic family and quickly became a part of the local parish and the tight-knit community. Jack was a hard worker, Janet a dedicated mom, and by all accounts, they were just an ordinary family. The house was a bit of a fixer-upper, and the family got right to work, repainting, repairing, and making it their own. For a while, life was good. Jack got a promotion, the kids were doing well in school, and his parents were happy next door. The Smurls even welcomed twin daughters, Shannon and Karen, completing their family. The house on Chase Street was supposed to be their sanctuary, a place of peace after the chaos of the flood. But according to the family, something was already there, waiting in the walls. And it wouldn't be long before it made itself known. This is where the timeline gets a little fuzzy. In some interviews, the family says the strange activity started almost as soon as they moved in around 1974. In others, Jeanette Smurl pinpointed the first major event to April 9, 1985, more than a decade later. This small discrepancy is an important detail in a story that would soon spiral into a national media sensation. A story where every detail would be picked apart by believers and skeptics. But whether it started in 74 or 85, the family's descriptions of what happened first follow an almost textbook pattern for a haunting. Section 2. The beginning of the haunting. A slow, creeping dread, before the terror became physical. The haunting on Chase Street began with small things you could easily explain away. Tools would go missing, only to reappear days later in plain sight. Fresh paint on the walls would somehow fail to cover old stains, which would bleed right through. Toilets would flush by themselves. Just weird household quirks, right? But then, the incidents got harder to rationalize. The family's brand new TV suddenly burst into flames. They checked the wiring, nothing was wrong with it. The kitchen radio, even when unplugged, would suddenly blare static in the middle of the night, startling everyone awake. Soon, the disturbances became more sensory. A foul, sickening odor would materialize out of nowhere, smelling like something had died, only to vanish moments later. They'd hear footsteps on the stairs when no one was there. Scratches would appear on walls and furniture with no explanation. And then came the noises. Not just footsteps, but deep, guttural pig grunts and animal-like sounds that seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. The activity wasn't just on Jack and Janet's side of the house. Jack's parents started experiencing it too. A constant, rhythmic knocking would echo through the duplex, often in a pattern of 3, a number that, in demonology, is said to be a mockery of the Holy Trinity. One of the more unsettling early claims involved sounds that seemed designed to turn the family against each other. Janet would clearly hear her mother-in-law, Mary, call her name, but when she went to check, Mary had been silent. At the same time, Mary would hear what sounded like Jack and Janet having a vicious, screaming argument when they were actually sitting quietly in their living room. It was like something was deliberately trying to create paranoia and tension. Alongside these strange events, the family's luck started to turn. They struggled financially despite Jack's promotion. The once happy home was becoming a place of constant stress. Then, in March of 1977, Jack's mother, Mary, had a serious heart attack, which the family later blamed on the oppressive atmosphere in the house. For over a decade, the Smurls tried to live with it. They prayed. They tried to ignore it. They didn't want to believe something was seriously wrong with their home. But whatever the phenomenon was, it was patient. It was building strength. And by the mid-1980s, the creepy noises and weird smells would give way to something far more direct, physical, and violent. The haunting on Chase Street was about to enter a terrifying new phase.
Be sure to like, subscribe to Is It Real, and share this video. But if you choose to ignore me, well, let's just say you've been warned.
Section 3. Escalation and Violence. Around 1985, it was as if an invisible barrier between the family and the entity just shattered. The haunting went from strange and unnerving to openly hostile and physically violent. The unseen force wasn't just making noises anymore. It started using its power on the family themselves. The claims from this period are terrifying. One of the Smurl daughters was reportedly shoved down a flight of stairs by an invisible force. Another daughter was almost seriously injured when, according to the family, a massive chandelier in the dining room suddenly fell from the ceiling, crashing down, gouging her forehead and leaving a deep mark on the refrigerator. Janet said it wasn't natural. The fixture didn't even sway, it just dropped. Even the family's 75-pound German Shepherd, who often growled at empty corners, became a target. In one of the most shocking accounts, the family said they watched in horror as the dog was lifted into the air and thrown violently against a wall by an unseen force. The activity grew bolder. Doors would unlock and fly open on their own. Heavy furniture would shake and vibrate as if an earthquake was striking, but only inside their house. Janet claimed that on one occasion, she was picked up by an invisible presence, dangled nearly 6 feet in the air, and then thrown across the room. The entity, or entities, also started to appear. The family reported seeing amorphous black masses, dark clouds that would float through the halls before disappearing. A more defined, terrifying figure also began to show up, a shadowy human-like shape with no features. One night, Jack claimed he heard a young woman whispering, and when he turned, he saw a shadowy figure run up his sleeping wife's leg before vanishing. But the most disturbing attacks, according to the family, were of a sexual nature. This is what took the Smurl case from a typical ghost story to something far more sinister in the public eye. Janet reported being held down and assaulted in her sleep by an unseen force. Jack Smurl made an even more shocking claim. He stated that on multiple occasions he was sexually assaulted by what's known as a succubus, a demon in female form. In one bizarre account, Jack claimed this succubus raped him in the living room while a baseball game was on TV. He also said the entity would bite him on the ear. These allegations of supernatural sexual assault are among the most sensational and controversial parts of the whole case. By early 1986, the Smurls were at their breaking point. They felt they were under siege. They turned to their local Catholic church, and their pastor blessed the home twice, but the activity only got worse. The Diocese of Scranton sent another priest to stay overnight on 3 separate occasions to investigate. He saw and heard nothing. The church, it seemed, was either unable or unwilling to confirm a demonic presence. Desperate, terrified, and feeling abandoned, the Smurls decided to look for help elsewhere. They had heard of a couple from Connecticut's self-proclaimed demonologists, who had investigated some of the most famous paranormal cases in the world, including a house in Amityville. In January 1986, Jack and Janet Smurl made the fateful call to Ed and Lorraine Warren. And with that phone call, their private nightmare was about to become a very public spectacle. Section 4. The Warrens' investigation and the media circus. When Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived at Chase Street in January 1986, they brought their famous reputation with them. Ed was a self-taught demonologist, and his wife Lorraine claimed to be a gifted clairvoyant. To the Smurls, they were a last hope. To skeptics, they were masters of suggestion, who profited from fear. The Warrens' investigation was dramatic from the start. Ed Warren claimed his method was simple: religious provocation. Armed with a crucifix and holy water, he would taunt the entity, commanding it to show itself. He said the reaction in the Smurl house was immediate. The temperature plunged, a dark mass formed in front of him, and the room filled with a foul stench like rotting flesh. Lorraine toured the home and, using her alleged clairvoyant abilities, came to a stunning conclusion. She declared the Smurls were being haunted not by one entity, but by four. She claimed there was a harmless old woman, a violent young girl, and a man who had died in the home. But these three spirits, she said, were being controlled by a fourth, non-human entity, a powerful and malevolent demon. According to the Warrens, this demon was the true source of the family's torment. Ed Warren declared it was powerful, intangible, and very dangerous. The Warrens investigated for months, collecting what they claimed was evidence, including audio tapes of mysterious knocks and guttural sounds. They even claimed the demon left a message for them, scrawling "Get out" on a mirror. The Warrens' involvement. Things only got more intense. They recommended an exorcism, but the Diocese of Scranton was still hesitant. So, the Warrens brought in their own priests to perform rites. Janet Smurl would later claim that an unidentified Catholic priest, supposedly sent by the Vatican, performed 3 unsuccessful exorcisms. The reason they failed, she said, was that the demon was clever and would simply move from one side of the duplex to the other to avoid the rites. Frustrated, the Smurls, likely encouraged by the Warrens, decided to go public. And that changed everything. Their private struggle exploded into a national media frenzy. Reporters and TV crews descended on the quiet neighborhood. At the height of the chaos, the family claimed as many as 90 reporters were camped outside their home. The family appeared on programs like Larry King Live. Ed and Lorraine Warren held press conferences on the Smurls' front lawn. The case even attracted a visit from Jason Miller, the actor who played Father Karras in The Exorcist. The Smurl Haunting was no longer a family story. It was a real-life horror movie playing out on the nightly news. But all this attention cut both ways. While it did pressure the Catholic Church to finally assign an official exorcist, it also brought intense scrutiny. Neighbors got fed up with the disruption. People started throwing bricks at the house. And with the national attention came the professional skeptics, who saw not a tormented family, but a case that was ripe for debunking. Section 5. Fact versus Fiction. The movie, the hoax, and the psychology. Okay, so this is where we need to press pause on the ghost story and start asking some tough questions. The Smurl case is a maze of incredible claims, but it's also missing one key thing: proof. Let's start with the most recent version of this story. The film The Conjuring Last Rites. The movie uses the Smurl Haunting as its foundation, but it takes huge creative liberties. One of the central plot points in the film is a cursed mirror that acts as a doorway for the demon. In reality, while the Warrens did claim a demon wrote a message on a mirror, there was never any mention of a cursed mirror being the source of the haunting. That whole idea was invented for the film to create a connection between the Warrens and the Smurls. Similarly, the movie focuses heavily on the Warrens' daughter Judy, but she wasn't involved in the real case at all. The film presents the Warrens as the heroes who solved the case and defeated the demon. The reality is far murkier. The exorcisms were performed by priests, and the Warrens weren't even present for the final one that the family claimed brought them peace. Beyond the movie, we have to talk about the biggest skeptical argument: that the whole thing was a hoax. The most vocal critic at the time was Paul Kurtz, a philosophy professor and chairman of a paranormal investigation committee. He called the Smurls' claims a hoax, a charade, a ghost story. He pointed out that the Warrens weren't impartial investigators and compared the case to the Amityville Horror, another famous Warren investigation that was later exposed as a hoax. His argument was simple. The entire case rested on the word of the Smurl family and the Warrens, with zero independent verifiable evidence. The hoax-for-profit motive is often brought up. In 1986, a book was released called The Haunted, written in collaboration with the Smurls and the Warrens. This was followed by a popular TV movie in 1991. To skeptics, this looked like a clear financial motivation. It's worth noting, though, that the Smurls reportedly never received royalties and always insisted their story was true. Then there's the psychological perspective. Skeptics suggested the claims could be the result of delusions or hallucinations. This theory gained some steam when it was revealed that Jack Smurl had surgery in 1983 to remove water from his brain. Some argued this pre-existing medical condition could have been a factor. Could the alleged haunting have been an externalization of internal family stress? The Smurls were under significant financial pressure. Could it have been a case of shared delusion? where one person's belief is passed on to others in a close group? Once the Warrens, respected authorities on the demonic, showed up and confirmed a demon was present, it's possible their diagnosis only amplified the family's beliefs. And here's the biggest problem for believers: the total lack of physical evidence. For over a decade, the family claimed to have endured thousands of paranormal events, yet there isn't a single credible photo or recording. The only evidence ever presented were audio tapes of knocks recorded by the Warrens, which are impossible to verify as paranormal. Even the third-party witnesses are a problem. Neighbors heard screams, but only when the family wasn't home. Priests stayed in the house and experienced nothing. And maybe the most damning evidence against the haunting is what happened after the Smurls left. In 1988, a woman named Deborah Owens moved into the house on Chase Street. She told reporters she lived there without any incident and never encountered anything supernatural. The same was true for everyone who lived thereafter. The powerful demon was apparently gone, or maybe it had never been there at all.
You're watching Is It Real? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, unless you want to regret ignoring me.
Section 6. The Aftermath and Lingering Questions. The climax of the Smurl family's ordeal didn't happen at the house on Chase Street. In 1987, exhausted by the media and the torment, the family moved out and relocated to a nearby town. But according to them, the horror followed. Soon after moving into their new home, the phenomena reportedly began again. This detail is crucial. For believers, it proved the haunting was attached to the family, not the house a sign of a demonic infestation. For skeptics, it reinforced the idea that the problem was psychological, carried with the family wherever they went. The Smurls made one final plea to the Catholic Church. This time, the Bishop of Scranton authorized Father Alphonsus, traveled an experienced exorcist, to handle the case. In 1989, Father Trebold performed a fourth and final church-sanctioned exorcism. The details are secret, but according to the Smurls, it worked. It claimed the activity stopped for good. Back in West Pittston, the new owner of the house on Chase Street complained he had trouble finding tenants because of the stigma. But as we mentioned, the tenants who did move in, starting with Deborah Owens in 1988, all reported living in perfect peace. The Smurl family mostly faded from the public eye. Jack Smurl passed away in 2017. His wife Janet and their daughters still maintain their experiences were real. In a poignant twist, one of their daughters, Karen, became a part-time paranormal investigator. After her father's death, she told a newspaper, "We had such a hard time, and nobody to turn to. He was happy I was a voice out there for people who need help." The legacy of the Smurl haunting is complicated. For believers, it's a terrifying story of a family's faith against pure evil. For skeptics, it's a cautionary tale about media hysteria and the power of suggestion. The gap between those two viewpoints is huge, and the truth is probably buried somewhere in the middle. What do you think? Was the Smurl family truly tormented by a demon for over a decade? Or was it a perfect storm of stress, suggestion, and maybe even deception, blown up into a national spectacle? Let us know your theory in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look into the unexplained, please hit that like button and subscribe for more investigations into the strange. Conclusion. The story of the Smurl family forces us to confront what we believe is possible in our homes, in our world, and in the unseen spaces between. The family says they were victims of a supernatural war. The people who lived in the house after them lived in perfect peace. The Warrens declared it a victory. Skeptics called it a charade. All of those things can't be true at once. Decades later, we're left with only the story. A story of an ordinary family whose life became anything but. And it leaves us with one final, haunting question. If it wasn't a demon, then what was it?
Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Is It Real? Also, I compel you to share your thoughts in the comment box below.